By 9 on a Wednesday, my desk already smelled like printer toner and burnt coffee. I worked the mid-floor of our energy company, 2 blocks from the water, where the elevators stuck on 7 and the conference rooms were named after rivers no one in Seattle had actually seen. I was the one who double-checked numbers after managers had already decided they looked fine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. At 10:12, a binder hit my keyboard hard enough to wake the spacebar. Quarter-end approvals, flagged urgent. I skimmed the index, then the vendor sheets. Routine line items, substation upgrades, environmental audits, transmission studies. Then a batch of consulting expenses, tucked behind a glossy cover page that pretended to be a risk memo. The totals were sliced into neat tens, each just under the internal threshold that forced compliance review. Names I recognized as friends of friends, LLCS formed 3 months ago. Services described with words that mean nothing. Strategic evaluation, optimization support, stakeholder interface. I opened the ledger, traced one cost center to an offline peaker plant that hadn't stirred in years. The invoices showed site visits on days the gate cameras were down for maintenance. I checked travel receipts. No mileage, no flights, no hotel stays. I pulled the Secretary of State filings. One LLC manager matched a purchasing director's husband. Another matched a board advisor's niece. The math said pattern. The gut said game. At 11:03, my manager, Brent, leaned over my chair, breath like mint gum. "We good?" "Not yet," I said. "These vendors?" "Legal has seen it. Sign and transmit. Legal saw the summary, not the source docs." I slid the binder an inch. "These are disguised transfers." "I'm not signing." He laughed in the small way people laugh when they're warning you. "Don't be dramatic, Jenna." "Then let's loop in audit." That would slow delivery. We have guidance from the top. At the top, they can initial it themselves. His jaw twitched. He took the binder, set it back. "You're here to execute." "I'm here to keep us clean." He left without the binder. 15 minutes later, HR pinged me to pop by. I brought the binder. The HR rep, a woman I barely knew, had a template open before I sat. Brent stood by the window, arms crossed, pretending the skyline was interesting. The rep read, voice smooth. "Effective today, your employment is terminated for violation of ethical standards, specifically insubordination and interference with approved financial processes." "I refuse to sign fraudulent invoices," I said. "That's the ethical standard." The rep repeated the sentence like the second pass would make it truer. A guard waited by the door with a cardboard box. Brent wouldn't meet my eyes. I slid my security badge onto the desk and left the binder on top of it. No one reached for either. By 1:40, I was on the sidewalk holding a box that contained a plant I'd killed and 3 pens that never worked. The drizzle felt like someone else's bad mood. I walked 2 blocks, then 3, letting the cold pull me forward. After a bus ride that smelled like wet wool, I climbed the stairs to my apartment. Tyler was there, home early, sweatshirt half zipped. He opened his arms like we were in a commercial. "What happened?" he asked. "I wouldn't sign trash. They fired me." "Babe, no, that's insane." He pulled me in, kissed my forehead, said the right words, offered DoorDash like a bandage. His phone buzzed on the counter. I wasn't looking for anything. The screen lit, bright as a stage note. Last night was unforgettable. A name from my office. A woman who wore austere suits and laughed at every executive joke. He didn't grab the phone. He said nothing. His face did the math and hid the answer. "I'm going to shower," I said. The water ran long enough for me to stop shaking. When I came out, He was setting plates like nothing had shifted. I nodded, sat, ate 2 bites I couldn't taste. We spoke about nothing that could bruise: the weather, the traffic, the new ramen place on Pike. At 11:06, he fell asleep with the TV on. I put the plant in the trash, pulled a suitcase from the closet, rolled clothes without thinking about combinations. Jeans, 3 blouses, the sweater I wore when I needed to feel like a person. Passport, because you take it when you don't know where you're going. I took the folder with my last performance review, the one that used words like integrity and ownership. At 12:17, I eased the door closed. The hallway smelled like laundry soap and dust. I didn't leave a note. The elevator caught on 7 and released at 1. In the parking garage, my car blinked awake like it believed in me. I turned the key, watched the clock flip to 12:20, and drove toward the highway without a destination, only a direction that felt like a way. Late that same day, I reached Bayview. The road dipped to a marina and a strip of cafes. I parked by a 1-room realty office. My aunt had a place here, I told the agent. Ruth Dobson. He checked his screen. Shingle house on Bluff Street. Estate's still open. He slid keys across the counter. Short stay while we keep it listed. No parties. If anything sparks, call an electrician before you call me. 30 minutes later, I was in a house that remembered me. 2 bedrooms, uneven floors, windows on the bay. I opened the sashes, ran the taps, set my suitcase on the quieter bed. That night, I slept enough to feel like myself. Next morning, I made coffee and walked the rooms with a legal pad. Cracked outlets, a soft dining ceiling, the back gate off its hinge. A list was something I could carry. On day 2, the porch light failed and the breaker snapped. I called the number on the key tag. "Liam," the voice said, 3 o'clock? He arrived at 3 in a gray van. Early 30s, work boots, hands mapped by small cuts. He opened the service box and didn't flinch. "Original panel?" he asked. "I think so. We can make this safe without stripping the place." He worked steadily. The porch light returned. He rinsed his hands. "I used to be with a big outfit," he said. "Then things went sideways." "How sideways?" "Someone higher up used my signature." I called it out. "They called it insubordination. I was fired yesterday for refusing to sign cooked invoices," I said. "That tracks." He wrote his number on the receipt. "In case the house tells you another secret." Across the week, he returned for necessary fixes. A humming hall light, a bad ground, a bathroom fan that lied. He never pushed extra work. Sometimes he stayed for tea and bread. He had a sister nearby, a nephew he took fishing. I told him about spreadsheets and the relief of a ledger that balances. One evening, the bay mirrored streetlights. He swapped a porch outlet, then paused at the threshold. "You don't ask many questions," he said. "I'm tired of answers that turn into arguments." He nodded. "Call if anything hums that shouldn't." When he left, I held the legal pad. The list was shorter, the rooms less provisional. I patched the ceiling, repainted a sill, oiled the gate until it swung clean. By week's end, I had a routine. Coffee, a walk to the pier, a repair, emails to lawyers I kept in drafts. Nights were calm enough for the far ferry horn. I cooked simple food and ate at the small table with my phone face down. Sunday, Liam knocked again. "The panel's fine," he said, "but the kitchen wants a GFCI." We worked side by side, he cutting power, me labeling breakers that had lost their names. When the test light clicked, we both exhaled. "I like it here," I said. "It's a good place to start over," he said, then corrected himself. "If that's what you're doing?" "I'm starting something," I said. He gathered his tools. We stood a second longer than needed. No promises, just a safer house, and two people who knew the value of that. By the next week, Liam's visits became something normal. At first he came to fix things. A leak under the sink, a faulty switch in the hall. Then he stayed longer, not because there was work left, but because neither of us wanted to end the conversation too early. One evening, he brought takeout from a diner in town. We sat on the porch steps with paper boxes balanced on our knees, the ocean air cool and sharp. "Do you ever miss your old job?" I asked. He shook his head. "At first, yeah. The paycheck mostly, but not what came with it. You ever realize the people you thought respected you just didn't?" "All the time," I said. "I used to believe integrity would protect me. Turns out it's more like walking around with a target on your chest." He gave a short laugh. "Maybe. Or maybe you just haven't met someone who sees it for what it is." For a while we said nothing. The streetlights flicked on. Then out of nowhere he said, "Honesty used to mean something to me." Then I watched it tear a family apart. Sometimes a lie is just mercy with better timing. I looked at him. Or maybe it's fear dressed as kindness. He met my eyes for a long second, then leaned in. The kiss wasn't planned, not even gentle, more like an exhale we both needed. No promises, no declarations, just proof that we were still alive enough to reach for someone. After that, he started leaving his jacket on the hook, his coffee mug beside mine. We didn't talk about it. He'd fix something, I'd make dinner, and we'd fall into a rhythm that wasn't love yet, but it was something that felt close. A few days later, someone knocked. A man about Liam's height stood there, hair shorter, eyes sharper. "You must be Jenna," he said. "I'm Eric." Liam's brother Liam froze in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" "Making sure you didn't disappear again," Eric said, stepping inside without being invited. "You pick a new town every time things go bad. Guess this one comes with company." "Don't start," Liam muttered. Eric turned to me. "My brother's got a pattern. He finds broken places and tries to fix them. When it doesn't work, he runs." Liam's fists clenched. "Get out." But Eric wasn't angry, just tired. "I'm not here to fight. Just to say, don't expect him to stay once things get too real." That night, after Eric left, I couldn't sleep. I went outside, sat on the porch, and found him there. "Is it true?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "Parts of it. I used to think I could save people. Turns out I just didn't know what to do with my own mess." He stayed quiet, then whispered, "You shouldn't trust me too much." "Then don't give me reasons not to," I said. He looked at me, unsure how to answer. Before he could act, the headlights swept across the yard. Eric again, this time to drop off a toolbox Liam had left behind. He handed it over, but his gaze stayed on me. "You deserve someone who won't vanish when things burn," he said softly. When our eyes met, something unspoken passed between us. Recognition, maybe, the kind that comes from people who've already lost too much. He leaned closer, almost without thinking, and kissed me. It was brief, real, and wrong in every possible way. That's when the door behind me opened, and Liam stood there, eyes wide, shoulders tight, toolbox still in his hands. No one said a word. The air between us felt too thin to breathe. The next morning, Liam was gone. No note, no message, just his jacket folded neatly on the chair. The house felt stripped, like someone had turned down the volume on everything. I tried calling once, then stopped. I'd learned by now that some people only return when they've decided they deserve to. 3 days passed before I saw him again. He came back late afternoon, carrying his toolbox, acting as if he'd never left. His phone was cracked, his face drawn. "Panel's fine," he said, setting the box down. "That's what you came to check?" He looked past me, at the half-burned edge of a curtain he'd hung himself. "Yeah." We didn't mention what had happened. The kiss, the doorway, Eric. Instead, we cleaned, painted, fixed things that didn't need fixing. Two people trying to rebuild something by pretending it hadn't already fallen apart. A week later, my cousin Bianca called. Her voice was slow, careful. "Jenna, I need a favor." "Anything," I said before I knew what it was. "I'm going into treatment. Just a few weeks. Could you take Ellie for a while?" Ellie, her daughter, 9 years old, quiet but sharp. I'd met her twice. "Of course," I said, because I never learned to say no to someone asking for help. The next morning, a car pulled up the drive. Ellie stepped out with a backpack, a stuffed fox under her arm. She looked at me like she already knew the house better than I did. "This is temporary," she said calmly. "Most things are," I answered. Inside, she unpacked herself into the spare room. By evening, she'd found the one working flashlight, the loose floorboard, the cookie tin on the fridge. Observant didn't begin to cover it. After dinner, she sat across from Liam at the table. "You fix things," she said. "Sometimes," he replied. "Do you break them, too?" He blinked. "Not on purpose." She nodded, satisfied with the honesty. Then she looked at me. "You both look like people who survived something and don't want to talk about it." Liam gave a short laugh. "You're a little too smart for 9. "That's what my mom says," Ellie said. "But she says it when she's tired." That night, I found Liam in the living room, staring at the fire he'd just built. "You okay?" I asked. "She's something," he said quietly. I didn't expect her to see through me that fast. "She does that to everyone," I said. "It's like she skips the small talk and goes straight to the truth." He nodded, poking the fire. "Maybe that's what we need." A few nights later, I woke to the sound of muffled talking. From the hallway, I saw Ellie sitting on the couch next to him. She was saying something in that calm, matter-of-fact tone only kids use when they're sure they're right. "If you leave again," she said, "she'll act like it's fine. But she'll cry after she thinks I'm asleep." Liam froze. His jaw worked, but no words came out. Ellie turned off the lamp and walked past him without another word. He stayed there until the fire burned out. I watched from the hallway, realizing she'd just said everything I hadn't been able to. When he finally stood, he looked toward my room, hesitated, then went outside instead. The next morning, he was still there, sitting on the porch steps, hands black with soot. We didn't talk about what Ellie said. We didn't need to. It hung in the air like smoke after a fire, evidence that something had burned, even if the flames were gone. By the end of that first week, the house had changed again, not because of the repairs, but because of Ellie. She filled the place with small noises, pencil scratches on paper, the soft hum she made when she was thinking, the click of her flashlight under the covers at night. It wasn't chaotic. It was alive in a way I'd forgotten houses could be. She was polite, but never shy. "Do you still have a job?" she asked one morning over cereal. "Not right now." "So you're like me." Waiting for adults to decide what happens next, I smiled. "I guess I am." She shrugged. "You should paint something." Waiting feels shorter when you're busy. Liam came in halfway through breakfast, smelling of sawdust and coffee. "You giving her life advice already?" he teased. "She asked," Ellie said, then studied him for a long moment. "You look better when you talk instead of stare." He laughed, genuinely this time. Noted. In a few days, she'd built her own small routines, feeding the neighbor's cat, collecting shells by the shore, asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. She didn't act like a guest. She acted like someone quietly testing the shape of home. One evening, we played cards at the kitchen table. Ellie won easily. Adults always underestimate kids, she said, gathering the deck. You think we don't notice things, but we do. We just don't always say them. What kind of things? Liam asked. Like when people pretend they're fine because it's easier than admitting they're not. She looked at him, then at me. You both do that. He leaned back, trying to make it sound like a joke. Maybe we're just bad actors. She didn't smile. No, you're tired ones. When she went to bed, we sat quietly for a while. The night was warm, and the bay outside glimmered faintly. She's too perceptive, Liam said. It's like she sees through everything. She's been through enough to know what pretending looks like, I said. Kids like that grow up before they should. He nodded, staring at the table. I don't know if I'm someone who should be around her. She trusts you, I said. You're the one who checks the smoke alarms twice before bed. He smiled a little. That's just habit. Still means something. 2 nights later, I heard murmuring from the hallway again. I stepped closer. Ellie's door was half open, her small lamp still on. Liam was sitting on the floor outside, leaning against the frame. If you leave, she said softly, don't make it quiet. Quiet hurts worse. His head dropped into his hands. I don't want to leave, Ellie. Then don't, she said simply, and turned off the light. He sat there for a long time, and I didn't interrupt. When I finally went back to bed, I thought about how that child, barely 9, had managed to say what I hadn't found the courage to. She didn't beg, didn't accuse. She just told the truth in the plainest form possible. The next morning, he was still there, asleep in the hallway. Ellie stepped over him on her way to the kitchen and whispered, He's trying. I nodded, watching her pour cereal like she'd been doing it for years. Somewhere between the sound of the spoon and the first wave of daylight through the window, I realized we were no longer 3 strangers trying to share a roof. We were starting, just barely, to act like a family. For almost a month, things stayed steady. Ellie started school nearby, bringing home half-finished art projects and stories about classmates who already felt like background characters in her life. Liam repaired what the fire inspector called questionable wiring. I worked part-time at a small accounting office in town. For the first time in years, my days felt predictable. Then the letter arrived. It came in an unmarked envelope, postmarked 2 towns away. Inside was a single sheet of paper. She's not as innocent as she looks. Ask Eric. Liam found it before I did. He was sitting at the table when I came home, the paper flat between his hands. His face looked carved out of stone. What's this supposed to mean? He asked. I don't know, I said, taking the letter. Don't lie to me. I'm not. He stood. You've been quiet since he showed up. Are you thinking about him? Liam, it was one mistake. You disappeared after it happened. What did you expect? He pushed his chair back. I expected honesty, not secrets in the mailbox. And I expected someone who doesn't vanish when things get hard, I said. Guess we're both disappointed. His voice rose, raw and jagged. You think I don't care? I carried that kid out of a burning house once. I know what leaving costs. Then stop walking away every time you feel cornered. We were both shouting by the time Ellie appeared in the doorway, hair messy from sleep. Stop, she said quietly. You're supposed to be the adults. That single sentence shut us down faster than any argument could. She turned and went back to her room, the soft thud of her door louder than anything we'd said. Neither of us spoke again that night. Later, I couldn't sleep. The wind had picked up, and the old house creaked like it was warning us. Liam was in the kitchen, pacing. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes hollow. "I don't even know who sent it," he muttered. "Maybe no one who matters," I said. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. At 2:30 a.m., a sharp pop cut through the house, then the smell, electrical burn, instant and thick. Liam moved before I could react, racing toward the living room. Sparks hissed behind the wall socket, and within seconds a small flame crawled up the wallpaper. "Get Ellie!" he shouted. I ran. She was already standing in the doorway, clutching her stuffed fox, eyes wide but steady. "It's okay," I told her. "Come on!" By the time we reached the yard, the flames had climbed to the ceiling. Liam stumbled out coughing, his arm around my shoulders as sirens wailed in the distance. We stood together, watching the only safe part of the house, the porch light he'd installed himself, flicker and die. The fire trucks came fast. The water hit harder. By dawn, half the house was blackened, soaked and steaming. Ellie sat wrapped in a blanket on the curb, quiet. Liam crouched beside her, his hands shaking. "You're okay," he kept saying. She nodded. "You saved me." He looked at me, eyes tired and lost. "Not really," he said softly. By morning, he was gone again. I found his note on the counter. "I'm no one's savior. Don't look for me." The words didn't sting like before. They just felt inevitable. Ellie read it, folded it neatly, and said, "He'll come back." People like him always do when they remember someone still believes they can. I didn't answer. I just looked at the wreck of the house behind us, half burned, half standing, and thought how fitting it was. It looked exactly like what we'd all become. 3 months passed before I heard from him again. The house was mostly repaired by then. Not perfect, but livable. The upstairs still smelled faintly of smoke, the walls uneven where new drywall met old. Ellie and I occupied the half that survived untouched. I handled the insurance forms, the plumbing fixes, the quiet. Bianca texted twice during that time, still in treatment. "Don't know when I'll be out." Then a week later, maybe for good. That was it. No calls, no explanations. Ellie never asked when her mother was coming back. One evening, while I was making dinner, she said, "If she doesn't, it's okay. I like it here." "You sure?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "You let me breathe." The court process for guardianship was slow, but steady. The social worker visited twice and left with a small smile the second time. "You've built something here," she said. I wanted to tell her we hadn't built it. We'd just kept it from collapsing. Then, one evening, near the start of spring, I heard footsteps outside. The gate creaked, the one Liam had oiled months ago. When I opened the door, he was standing there. His hands were cut up, clothes worn, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Didn't think you'd open," he said. "I almost didn't." He nodded. "Fair." We stood there, the distance between us heavier than the months apart. Then he said quietly, "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. Just a place to stay." Until you tell me to leave, I looked at him, at the man who had saved us and left us, the man who didn't know how to exist without fixing something. I should have said no. Instead, I said, "You can stay," but this time not as a rescuer, as someone who learns to stay put. He hesitated, then nodded once. "Deal." Inside, the house felt smaller, fuller. Ellie appeared from the hallway, holding 2 mugs and a third she'd dug out from the back of the cabinet. "You're late," she said simply, setting the cocoa down in front of him. He looked startled. You knew I'd come back? I hoped, she said. That's not the same thing, but it's close. We sat together at the table. No speeches, no explanations, just the sound of spoons against ceramic and the low hum of the heater. Later, as Ellie went to bed, she paused in the doorway. You two aren't broken anymore, she said softly. After she was gone, Liam turned to me. She's wrong about that, he said. She is, I agreed. But maybe that's fine. He reached across the table, his hand rough against mine. You rebuilt this place. No, I said, we did. All three of us. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel fragile. The walls still bore smoke stains, but they were proof, not of disaster, but of survival. Outside, the bay lights shimmered. Inside, it was just us, tired, scarred, still here. Not perfect, not fixed, but together. And for now, that was enough.